Today's podcast is an uplifting one, and I think we need some uplifting messages in these times. It starts with a tragic story, and Coach Brogan had to take over and lead the team after the former head coach, one of his best friends, was murdered in front of his own family. Very tragic in how Coach had to take over the program, but what he's done since has been exceptional. He's sitting on 370 wins, third all-time in Michigan high school football history, one of the highest winning percentages in Michigan football history. And this is one I just really enjoyed, Coach's approach to the game, how he's sustained success long-term, and I think there's something to take away, whatever level you coach at, whatever position you coach. There's something here to learn. I continue my discussions with state champions, and joining me today on the podcast is a 10-time state champion. Did it twice as an assistant, 8 times as a head coach, 2 in a row at Lumen Christi High School in Jackson, Michigan. Coach Herb Brogan. Coach, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Keith.
Coach, 47 years. You've seen a lot of things happen along the way, and we'll get into some of the details of those exact things. But let's go back to the beginning for you. What were the things that really drove you to get into education and becoming a football coach?
Well, Keith, I think football is always really important to me, and I think that one of the important things is at every level of my education, elementary, high school, college, my coaches were the most instrumental people in my life. I went, you go to college and you expect to see great professors, and none of them could hold a candle to my coaches, and I just think I felt that as much of an influence as they had on me, and as valuable as I thought they were, it would just be a great path to follow.
Coach, I remember those days when I made that transition from being a player to stepping out on the field as a coach. I think you know a lot as a player, having grown up with the game, et cetera, and you're going to be a coach. You're all excited. What were some of the things you found out right away that I have to get good at these things in order to succeed in the profession?
Well, I think number one, I don't know if coaching is ever as good as playing the game, but I think that for most of us, and I was probably lucky in a sense that I played a lot of different positions over the course of my career, but a lot of us are pigeonholed either as a skill player, or as a lineman, or the defensive player, as an offensive player. So I think when you come into coaching, your knowledge is a little bit limited to the positions that you played, and so there's an awful lot to learn. If you're a skill player, there's so much to learn in the offensive line in terms of technique and the like. So your horizons are just have to be a lot broader. And I can remember sitting as an assistant in the defensive backfield in practice with our head coach at the time, and he told me, he said, "Wouldn't you love to come back and play knowing as much as you know now?" And it's really the truth. Your knowledge of the game as a player is limited, and you find that out when you start to coach.
Sometimes, Coach, we learn the most from mistakes we make. What's a mistake you made as a young coach, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I think to me, the struggles that you had as a coach is simply maturity. I can't point to one specific instance where I say, "Boy, I really screwed up there." But you make a lot of decisions when you're young that you look back on and you just think, wow, that's probably wasn't a very sharp thing to do. I think you tend to be a little bit more emotional, when you're younger. Although, quite honestly, anybody that watches us knows that I remain that way today. But I think as you mature, you learn to manage your emotions a little bit better and use them a little bit more. And they're probably not quite as raw as what they were when you were young.
Coach, you've been at Lumen Christi now for 47 years, going on 48. And before we got going, we talked about whether you had taken that job earlier as the head coach, and we'll talk about how that exactly happened in a second here. But you would be there regardless. That it's a great place. It's not something you see a lot of today, I think, in coaching, that there's guys who are going to bounce from job to job and maybe even chase a title to do that. How does a coach today in this world, I guess, find a situation that he can have that like you, that he can really go to one place and grow and continue to develop in the profession and even eventually become the head coach?
I think it's just important to find a situation that you're comfortable in, a situation where you're treated right, by the administration. If you're a head coach, you're treated right by the head coach. If you're an assistant, you like the kids that are there. I think a good situation is more important than a title. I know that our assistant coaches at our place have great impact on our kids, and in a lot of cases, they're working more closely with their position kids than what I am, and their impact on those kids is greater than what mine is. So I think it's just important that you look to find satisfaction in the job that you're doing, and knowing that it's not necessarily better at the next level. I've always been, thrilled to be a high school coach. I've never had a desire to be a college coach and to move up the ladder. That you look at so many places, and a Division III coach is just working his ass off because he wants to become a Division II coach, and a Division II coach wants to become a Division I coach. And I think the danger in that sometimes is that when that's the case, we start to use kids for our own advancement. And some of the stories you read and stuff, I think, are examples of that. And I think it's something that you got to watch out for a little bit.
On the flip side of that, Coach, I think you'll agree that as a head coach, you want that consistency. You want those guys to remain a part of your family, and it's important to your program. You see that you're able to, over a long course of time, sustain success because of those same guys being there with you, and you're learning and you're growing together. So how does a head coach out there who wants to create that kind of place where his guys can feel that they could stay and it's better than chasing a title, what things does he need to do as the head coach to make sure that he has that kind of program?
Well, you certainly got to make your guys feel comfortable, and I think that you've got to give them responsibilities. If we go back in, the way I learned 47 years ago was the head coach did everything. I know Jim Crowley did, and when I took over, I called every offensive play. I called every defense on every play. You did it all. And today we've got an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator, and sometimes I think to myself, what do you do? Period, other than organize when we go to flexibility and when we break up, because we've given our guys a lot more responsibility. But I think good coaches want responsibility, and when you give it to them, they're going to do a better job for you than what they've done before. And I think that I don't agree with every play that our offensive coordinator calls, but that's his responsibility. And if you're going to question what they're going to do, then you shouldn't have given him the job in the first place.
I believe your offense coordinator is your son, correct?
One of my sons is the offensive coordinator. Yeah, he is. So if I criticize him too much, I've got to answer to his mother.
Yeah, that's good. Taking a step back and talking a little bit about the circumstances and the tragedy that elevated you to the position of head coach. Can't imagine that would be an easy thing to do. Longtime friend of yours, and then you're tasked with, I can't imagine, not just from a personal standpoint, but all the boys in the program and the things you had to do to take those things over. How do you move on and do something like that when and for our listeners, your head coach at the time was murdered in his own yard. Just a tragic situation, but something that you're tasked with picking up the ball and moving on towards the goal.
It was really hard. I had played when I was at St. Mary's. Jim Crowley was coaching at St. John's, and so I had competed against him. went away to school, came back, and the two schools had been combined, and Lumen Christi had been built. And so I hired on there, and he just, he treated me great for 9 years. I learned more from him than probably any other coach I've been associated with. And as you mentioned, he had picked his daughter up from ice skating and come home, and he got approached in his yard in a robbery attempt and got shot and killed. And we still talk about that night to this day. It was brutal, and then to make things probably a little bit more difficult, that following year, his son was going to be a senior on the football team, so it was just kind of a constant that was there every day with us. But you hear the saying, the one thing about life, it happens, and we have to move on. And it was a really difficult situation, but our community, I thought, really bonded together and gave me an awful lot of support, and our other coaches on staff and the kids, and we eventually worked our way through it.
And Coach, obviously this has been a special place for you, going into your 48th year right now. I believe I read you're 67 years old. I mean, certainly you could be out on a golf course and playing golf all day, but you stay at it. And the other thing I read about you, I don't know if this is true or not, but as the legend goes, Coach, you've never missed a weight room workout in the time you've been the head coach.
I wouldn't probably go that far, but I have not missed very many. As we talked, prior to the interview starting, that's kind of the cornerstone of our program, and I believe in training the kids. I believe in training myself. So I said this in an interview one time before, and I had a coach, or the interviewer tell me, I've never had a coach tell me this before, and that is, I've told him I enjoy the off season every bit as much as I do the in season. I really enjoy training the kids, working with them in the weight room. I think that's a critical time in terms of getting to know each other, creating bonds, pushing hard, working hard, laughing, making fun of each other a little bit. I just think that the whole culture and atmosphere is formed in the off season, and it's a part of the job that I've always enjoyed just as much as the season itself.
It's definitely a time that you can build those relationships. Everybody talks about building a culture today, and it's a great opportunity. Now you see this transition, I think, to schools having the strength and conditioning coach. And I think that's good. I mean, obviously there's, the guys out there, just like you'd hire someone to run your offense and defense, because they study that and are intense with that. And, there's guys out there being certified as strength and conditioning coaches, and they can bring a lot in terms of those workouts. But I think especially at the high school level, even if you had that guy running it, it's so important to be involved with those guys at that time of the year. And I mean, I'm sure you support, the multi-sport athlete, but for those other guys, like you said, it's a chance to build those bonds, and really it's the heart of, I think, where culture is developed. We can create some competitiveness, we can do all those things, but it's the working together and the relationships, I think, are the cornerstone of everything we're going to do.
Well, I think one of our coaches and our kids were talking, and when they talked about our culture and what's the basis of that, and one of the kids said, we suffer together. And I think it's critical that when you're working out, there is an element of suffering there, and that the kids themselves have to do it, but they see their teammates doing it as well, and they've got to be there for each other. We just have a rule, whether we're running or whether we're lifting or whatever, nobody ever goes down. Your hands are never on your knees. You're not going to lean against the fence. That if you are having trouble staying up, the only thing you can do is lean on a teammate, and that's I think that's a kind of a common bond that we share. That you're not going to go down by yourself. If you got to go down, you're going to one of your teammates is going to keep you up, and so That's one of the things we really try to emphasize.
Coach, I saw that in the state championship game, you guys had 517 yards on the ground, and the run game obviously is, I think, very closely related to the work you're doing in the weight room. Just looking at that and the offensive side of the ball, what kinds of things are you guys doing that to hear anybody at any level run for that many yards is just, you don't hear that very often. It's unheard of. What are you guys doing that on offense that creates that much explosiveness in the run game?
Well, number one, we've got a great line coach in Dan Horn, who does a super job with the kids in terms of scheme and his relationship with them and the like. But again, as you said, it goes back to the work that we do in the weight room, and I think one of the great things that Dan has done is he's made it really great to be an offensive lineman. I think in a lot of programs, that's the position, of least choice. We want to be skill player first. If we've got to be a lineman, we want to be a defensive lineman. One of the things that's happened at our place is that it's really great to be an offensive lineman, and they're going to have T-shirts made up that they're going to do themselves with the offensive lineman. I try to make it, and I started this maybe 7-8 years ago, a special point that when we're in our summer workouts, when we finish in the weight room, we're going to do our running and our conditioning. I take the offensive linemen and I condition them separately from the rest of the team, and we do that just to kind of reinforce that bond and in a way try to make them feel a little bit special, and maybe giving them extra hard work is not the best way to make them feel special, but I think they feel a great amount of pride in being that, and our we've had some really good backs over the last few years, and those kids have consistently, and when they get interviewed after a game, pointed to the offensive lineman and as the reason for their success. So I think that the pride factor is just a really big part of it. To show those guys a little bit of extra attention because they're playing the position that probably gets the least amount of attention of any place else in the team. So if you can go out of your way and make a point of making them feel special, I think it's going to pay dividends.
We talked about player development being a big part of this for you, and you mentioned a group you had. That kind of, your story you share with me also points out the expectations, I guess, but a group you had that, as young guys, they were not finding the W column much, but you were able to take them to the point where they were in the semifinals as seniors. Talk about the importance of developing guys over the course of time, as opposed to, I know we live in an on-demand society, instead of finding the quick fix of working to develop guys for the long haul.
Well, it starts as soon as you get them, whether you have access to them as 7th or 8th graders, or they have access to them as 9th graders. You've got to spend time with the younger kids. We do our best to project, who's going to be playing where, and that's certainly an inexact science. But, I think your running backs and your skill kids probably don't need as much work as your beefier kids that probably don't have quite as much athletic ability. So we really spend a lot of time in trying to develop linemen on both sides of the ball. We certainly spend time with our quarterbacks throwing and our route runners and trying to teach them the right way to do things. But at the high school level, your great athletes are going to be great athletes, whether they have great technique or not. But your lineman type kids are the ones that you really got to develop into players.
With that being said, Coach, in the example you shared with me, what was it in that group, taking them from a group who really struggled as young guys all the way to a group as seniors who's in the state semifinals? In that specific example, what were you able to do to I guess, bring those guys to the level of the expectation of what's going to happen at Lumen Christi?
Well, part of it was developing the class behind them. but it's just never lowering your expectations. When kids struggle, and I try to tell our younger levels that everybody wants to win, and we want you to win, but it's not that important at the lower levels. It's important that you're getting better. I always tell the kids that if having an undefeated JV season was really critical, then we wouldn't have any sophomores up on the varsity. And so we try to reinforce to them that on the younger levels that it's a learning experience. We're certainly going to coach hard. We're certainly going to try to win ball games, but I think it's really important how you approach those kids after losses rather than after wins, because you don't want them to be discouraged. You always want to hold out some light at the end of the tunnel. That if they keep working hard, that they're going to get better as long as the effort's there. I think at those lower levels, coaching efforts one of the most important things that you can do.
And I know I agree with you there, Coach, that being positive with them, always making sure that they're keeping their eyes focused on something bigger is so important. But, as we were talking before the interview, you pointed out the necessity today to really not be afraid to go out there and challenge kids. I think we, in a way, have, I don't want to say we become soft as a society, but at the same time, I don't see our young people being challenged as much because it seems like there's backlash for everything. So talk a little bit about the importance of not being afraid to ask those guys to step up.
Well, I think that's another reason that, the weight room or whatever is so important, because you've got to develop individual relationships with the kids. They have to be able to trust you. Like you say, you're afraid to make a mistake in public or in cell phones anymore in a lot of professions, whatever, because you're going to be held up and instantly people are going to be calling for your head. So it's much more of a challenge how you react to kids. I think from a coaching standpoint, I grew up playing, and, for the first 10 to 15 years of coaching, you grew up in a culture where it was great, it was fine to grab kids, it was okay to grab face masks and shake helmets, and there was never a problem with that. It was almost expected. If you did some of the behaviors today that you did back then, you're going to get fired. And it's not that it was great back then and bad now. It's just that the expectations of society have changed, and you've got to learn to live with that and to live with those changes. I think a huge issue is technology, and I always say that too many young kids want to sit in front of a video screen and pretend they're players rather than being outside and becoming players. And so it becomes a challenge because you don't have access to a lot of those kids at a really young age, and they're not exposed a lot of times to hard work like they were before. But my experience has been that they will respond, and I think one of the things that makes our job easier is that people know when they come into the program what the expectations are. And it doesn't mean you don't have kids that are going to fight it, and you're going to have kids that are lazier than other kids. But if you can get if your leaders buy in, and you've got coaches that are around and pushing kids, they're going to respond today like they've always responded. I've never found kids that just refuse to work hard. And when I say that, that doesn't mean you're not going to have a class that doesn't work nearly as hard as the next class. But I'm talking in generalities here now over a 5 or 10 year period. If you've got relationships with kids and winning is important to them, they will work hard. But they're not going to work harder for the most part than what your expectations are. your best kids will. But you've got to set the bar high if you want the majority of kids working hard.
Coach, having been a coach for 47 years and seen a lot of changes along the way, I'm sure you're at least a little concerned about the future of the game and the way people are attacking it, and even some of the responses that we're seeing. For example, I just read a newspaper article today where a school system in Chicago or near Chicago canceled tackle football and replaced it with flag football as the answer to diminishing numbers. With the challenges we're faced today in the game, what do you see as some of the answers of what we need to do to keep this game strong and keep young men playing it? Because obviously we believe in the importance of it as a vehicle for teaching them success that's going to reach into other areas of life as well.
I think the threats that they're constantly talked about are simply overblown, and I really believe that. I mean, I grew up in a generation with a lot less safe equipment, a lot more physical rules, and everybody played the game. And if you were to listen to what's going on today, then everybody my age should be walking around like babbling idiots, and they're not. I think there's a real danger when you play junior high school and you play high school and you go to a major college and you play 13 games a year at that level, and then you go to the professional level and you're playing 20 games a year against the best, fastest athletes in the world at the level you need to compete against, then obviously the dangers from concussions and like are going to be increased and increased at a much higher level. And I think that's one of the reasons those guys get paid so much. But for people that come up through high school football, to me, the benefits just simply outweigh the risks that are involved. Everything is headed in the right direction in terms of safety. But to me, the challenge is not so much the dangers as how those dangers are portrayed. It's just much easier for a journalist to stand up and criticize the game and the way it's played and the dangers than it is to give a reasoned, response or look to what's going on. Even with the CTE and the like, you have ex-football players that their brains are examined, but what other groups are examined? Are basketball players, or hockey players, or garbage men, or the like? What's the relationship to the general population? I just feel that the dangers are overblown, the risks are overblown, and the benefits are understated. But regardless of what you feel, you're dealing with reality, and the reality is there's going to be a lot of negative stories. There's going to be more negative stories than there are positive stories. So on the local level and within your schools, you just have to work hard to make sure that people are seeing the benefits of what you're doing. I can tell you in our varsity program this year, we had 2 concussions. And both of those concussions were kids driving home from practice and hitting a deer on the way home. And so there are ways to manage the risks. We are big into neck training. We've got 4 neck machines in our weight room. We've got 5 or 6 different shrug machines. We do the best we can to keep our kids safe. We're not going to expose them to any extra hitting in practice and the like. And you have to be an example, I think, of the way things are done right. I know on one of your podcasts, and this is something that we've tried to start a conversation on a county level with some of the youth groups. One of the coaches down in Ohio had and the other young kids in 3rd or 4th grade play in equipment, but yet still play flag football.
Yep.
And I think that's a great idea. And one of the reasons I say that, I've got 2 grandsons that are in 2nd grade right now, and they will be eligible to play in tackle football next year, and they're both really looking forward to it. But, I mean, when you look at those kids and how young they are and how immature they are, and you know what those kids are anxious to do it. They're not anxious to get out there and just drill somebody. They are anxious to put the uniform on.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do. And so to me, the whole idea of putting them in that uniform and yet limiting contact when they're young, I think is an outstanding idea, and one that we've talked to our youth guys about, and I would like to see pushed, at the county level here as well.
Yeah, definitely, Coach. And for our listeners out there, if you're looking for that episode, it's Mike Elder at Avon High School in Ohio, where we talk about that. I think there's a couple other episodes, possibly our talk with Rich Wright, who's the head coach at Northwest Missouri State. I think we mentioned that in there as well. But, Coach, last question for you. 47 years, you've had a lot of success. You guys do some great things. If I say, Coach, pick the one thing that really makes a difference in your program and helps your players find the winning edge, what would that be?
I think it's our overall work ethic, how we approach work, work hard with enthusiasm. You don't want to beat your kids down. You want them upbeat when they're working hard. The heart and soul of our program is the weight room. I felt that from day one. I still feel it today, and that's the best advice I can get is get your kids in there, get them strong, get them working hard, run them hard, and have fun while you're doing it. You can't be a drill sergeant. You've got to be a relationship builder as well, but work hard and have fun doing it.
Coach, I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for all you do for the game and being a leader out there for coaches. For our coaches out there who are interested in getting in touch with you, I don't think I found you on social media, but what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, you're going to have a problem there. Quite honestly, to show you how bad I am with technology, I don't even have a cell phone. 3 weeks ago, my wife gave me her old cell phone, and I had it for a little while. I thought, this isn't all that bad, and right now I have no idea where it is. I've lost it. But probably the best way to get a hold of me is email. It's hbrogan10. That's the number 10. hbrogan10@hotmail.com.
Coach, again, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for being here on the podcast, and good luck to you and your team in 2018.
Thanks very much, Keith. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Stay tuned for news and new episodes coming soon. And follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski. Check out our new website for the podcast, coachandcoordinator.com.